Pucks with Haggs
is brought to you by Prize Picks and the Game Time app.
Welcome to the Pucks with Haggs podcast, powered by Prize Picks, the exclusive daily fantasy partner of the CLNS Media Network. This is the 151st episode of the Pucks with Haggs podcast, so thanks for listening. Welcome on in. I got longtime friend and colleague Mick Colageo here with me today to talk Bruins. Mick, why don't you tell everybody where people can find your work, my friend?
I write a blog called Rink Wrap, and I link to it on X and Facebook, and I'm in the seasonal issues of the Hockey News.
There you go. Check those out. Seasonal issues are out right now, right, for the Hockey News. This is the seasonal time of year, so check out the Hockey News. Check out all of Mick's writing. I am Joe Haggerty, by the way, your host. You can find my work at joehaggerty.substack.com. Subscribe and get yourself a premium membership. All of my NHL and Bruins writing sent straight directly to your inbox. I also write columns 3 times a week for the Boston Sports Journal, and I do a Q&A for them as well weekly with the readers. So get a subscription at bostonsportsjournal.com and get all kinds of great work on all of the Boston sports teams from Greg Bedard and the crew over there. Let's also thank our sponsors real quick. Prize Picks, of course. Download the Prize Picks app today and use the code CLNS and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code CLNS on Prize Picks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks, run your game. And also go through our friends at Game Time to get any kind of tickets in this holiday season. Stocking stuffers. Tickets always make a great gift. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply, of course. But download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. What time is it, Mick?
Game time.
It's Christmas game time, even better than regular game time.
Stocking stuffer game time.
There you go. What's better than that? All right, let's go over it, Mick. Good end to the trip, obviously, in general, the last 3 games after a disastrous first 2 games. Win in Vancouver that was excellent, very impressive. Win in Calgary that was equally impressive because they came back, especially where it looked similar to the Seattle game for a little bit there, like it was going down the same path. But this is the rub with the Bruins, right? This is where they kind of are right now. They put themselves in position to have a really good trip. They were up 2-0 against Edmonton, and they couldn't close the deal. And they end up getting an overtime loss. So it's like, yeah, you get a point. You don't feel like super great about the end of the trip because of the ending and because they couldn't finish it up strong. But it was kind of sort of okay. And that's kind of like where the Bruins I sort of almost expected that ending for this team last night and expected that was going to happen just because that's kind of the story of this team this year is they show you some good, they show you some bad. They they can't quite ever completely get over the hump into like getting on a really long roll or really feeling like they're, clicking on all cylinders for a long period of time. And different things are going wrong at different times. I felt like, my own opinion, I thought the first goal Swayman gave up was very soft. The second one, kind of soft. Like, it was obviously McDavid making a nice play. Both goals trickle through Swayman's leg pads. I feel like he definitely should have had the first one, maybe should have had both. Did make some good saves in the game, but really that first goal he allowed to Zach Hyman, it kind of opened the door for Edmonton to start feeling good and to start generating that comeback. And I feel like, a lot of the stuff that's been thrown at Swayman this year, I think a lot of fans are angry at him because he's struggled. And he hasn't had a good year coming off holding out at a training camp and all that's gone on. I don't feel like he's been the problem in a lot of that what's happened with the Bruins because I feel like a lot of it was very poor defense in front of him, and it was more to blame the guys in front of him than Jeremy Swayman. But I felt like kind of last night, if they wanted to win that game, if they wanted to get the 2 points out of that game, Swayman needed to be better. And that first goal really set them down a path to them ultimately losing that game. And that's kind of on him, especially, where he hasn't been as stellar and as, superstar notable as he was last season. It was Edmonton Stars making plays. They kind of took it from Boston in a way. But I also think last night set up to be one of those nights where Swayman could have really stepped up and been the guy who was last year and stole the game from them and really slammed the door on the Oilers. And he did not do that. So I kind of lay a little bit of this at the feet of Swayman. And, beyond that, I'm even like, I'm a little like, I love the guys at Nesson, but they also needed to, I think, say that a little bit more after the game last night, and they kind of downplayed it, and we're letting Swayman off the hook and kind of just being like, must have skidded. I know Raycroft is a member of the goalie guild, and he's not going to like really be down on another goalie, but like I just thought Swayman deserved to be called out after that game based on what happened, and it didn't happen after the game was over, and I think it kind of should have happened.
I guess you're calling me out too then, because my reaction in the moment was, the default position is, as our friend Chris Hurley reminded me before the season, late great Pat Burns once said that I've never seen a holdout, a training camp holdout that didn't hurt the team and the player. And
yeah,
Jeremy Swayman is capable of amazing, amazing performances as a technician and a pure reaction goalie. And I thought his last home game was excellent, and I told him so afterwards. It was just I was just watching the way he managed the game and the way he handled everything. And
he's definitely been playing like Mick. He's definitely been playing better as of late. I feel like over the last month or so, he's kind of more in midseason form. He's playing much better, like managing the game, playing the puck, like freezing the puck a lot more when the team needs it, like all the different stuff, the sort of nuanced stuff that a really good goalie has to do. I think he definitely has been better at. And that's why I feel okay saying this about last night's game, because I think it was a real piece of evidence or a real game where you could say Swayman needed to be better in that instance, where I think a lot of the time he's been taking strays because the defense has been bad in front of him, and it hasn't really been his fault. But I do, to your point, I absolutely think he's been closer to his normal level and what we saw to him last year over the last month or so. No doubt.
Okay. That said, last night he would have needed to be 20, 23, 24 Swayman.
Yes.
And
they're
I just
paying
don't
him to be
think
23, 24 Swayman. He's making $8 million a year.
That's
They're
true.
paying him to be the guy that can steal games for them and be an elite goalie. Like, he's getting paid to make those saves last night.
And if you're a talking head,
and hold on, let me finish this one thing, and then I'll let you go. I promise for a while. The whole basis of what I'm saying is this guy held the Bruins up to make sure he was going to get paid $8 million a year, that he was going to get his money. He did it to the detriment of the team by knowing he wasn't going to be ready to start the year and was going to, it was going to be a problem for this team, and they were going to hit a speed bump early because he wasn't ready to go after skipping camp. But he was willing to do that and hold the team up to make sure he got what he thought he was worth and to get his money. And now he is not performing up to the money that he's being paid. He is being paid like 23, 24 Swayman, like a guy that is going to steal that game against Edmonton, at least not let up soft goals. And he lets up a super softy to Zach Hyman on a quick shot at the net that goes right through his leg pads. A frankly typical shot that caught him by surprise from the faceoff circles that he should have been able to stop. If you're getting paid $8 million a year, you should stop that, and you should get criticized if you don't stop it. And I think Swayman wanted this contract. He wanted the expectations. He wanted the pressure on his shoulders. He wanted to be the number one guy. He wanted Ullmark gone and somewhere else so he could be the guy here. Well, guess what? He got all that, and he did not live up to it against Edmonton last night, and that was a big reason they lost that game, and he hasn't been up to it this year. And that's why I'm sort of hot on this, is because, I think, he deserves the criticism now. He wanted to get paid. He got paid. Now the expectations come with it, and he needs to meet those expectations and to be that good. And he frankly was not last night, and it's a big reason they lost. So I think there needs to be more discussion, more talk about Swayman not being good enough in that game than I think has been going on, where everybody's been treating him with kid gloves. It's time to take those off and call things as they are.
Yeah, I guess I'm just adjusted to the reality that it may take him most of the season to recover that form. And while we see it in bits and pieces here and there, we see hints that he's getting there. We don't see it on an every game basis.
Yep.
And of course, he wasn't playing last year on an every game basis. So
Yep.
So the fact that he's starting to show it and that Joe Sacco has entrusted him, had said, here's the ball, run with it. Well, he can't punch it into the end zone right now against the top teams. He's showing us that he can do some great things out there, and that his level seems to me like it's recoverable, and but on a consistent basis, and in the hottest fire pot in the league, I think that's really not going to be there. I thought Mason Lowry interfered with him on the final goal.
Yeah.
The tying goal.
Yeah, the last one I'm definitely less. I think is less an indictment on him. I think you're right. McDavid made a great play. The defense had been out there for a while.
That was right out of the annals of Bobby Orr.
Yeah,
for him to see Zadorov's position and decide, I'm going to take a hard step to my right, and I am going to pull the puck around this guy, and I am going to strong arm him, and I'm going to get behind him and between him and the net. And that was people who didn't get to watch Bobby Orr play. That McDavid move on a tying goal last night on Zadorov was right out of the Bobby. That is what Bobby Orr could do. That is what he did. If you feel like, I never got to see Bobby Orr, in that moment, you saw Bobby Orr. That is what he did. And, he could change a game that way. There are a few players who can just go ahead and say, I'm going to tie this sucker up. And that's the power of generational talent.
Yep.
And that's what we saw last night in that moment. It's unfortunate that Lowry got involved there, and I was hoping Sacco would challenge for goalie interference on his own player, but it didn't come to pass.
That would have been awesome.
Yeah, but that whole game, I kind of felt like one of those late 70s games at the Montreal Forum where, hey, we're doing everything right. Don't anybody screw up.
Right. Yeah.
and the game was too long.
Yeah. I mean, yes, look, part of greatness for any player like McDavid is recognizing the situation that he's in and recognizing all of the different factors at play. And clearly in that moment when he did that, he knew that Zadorov and Lowry had been out there for a long time, and that if he really turned on the Jets, they were not going to have the legs to be able to stop him or keep up with him, and be able to get in there. And he made the right call. They were both gassed. They were trying to get off the ice. They couldn't in that moment when McDavid got the puck outside the blue line and just swung it right back in and went into attack mode again. And the Bruins were kind of in disarray there trying to get off. And that's a great player taking advantage of a situation right there and knowing exactly how long they'd been out there, what he could do to attack, and having the skill and the speed and everything, the natural ability to be able to make that play. So I credit him with all that stuff. And that one I am a lot less – even though it sort of trickled through Swayman, even with all of that, it still got through his leg pads and it kind of just got through. And yeah, maybe Lowry interfered with him a little bit, but it also is one of those ones that I feel like a great goalie will somehow come up with.
Tim Thomas might have checked Lowry out of his way and then made the save. Yeah, I mean things like that.
Yeah, but that
improvisational moments.
That one is I'm much less.
Less of an indictment
worked up about than the one that he allowed to Hyman that opened the door for everything. Like that gave Edmonton a foothold. The Bruins were cruising 2-0. They were really playing well. It was halfway point of the game. They were doing all the right things.
Yeah.
And it gave Edmonton life when Swayman gave up that goal. And as soon as he gave up that goal and the way he gave it up, you're like, oh. And that's when you start having that feeling, Mick, okay, what's the other shoe that's going to drop? And this is eventually going to be a bad ending. Because when you see a goalie give up a goal in that situation, it almost always turns into this big momentum shift where you give a ton of life to the other team and it really turns against you. And that's exactly what happened. And I blame Swayman for that. He's at fault for that goal. That is completely on him. And I know Razor after the game, Andrew Raycroft, God bless him, he's a member of the goalie guild, was trying to give him like 5 different excuses, saying maybe it hit a player, maybe it hit the ice and went on edge, like all this different stuff that he was saying. It looked like he was reading pass and the shot caught him by surprise and he wasn't ready to stop it. And it's a soft goal, and you can say it's okay to say it's a soft goal. You don't need to continue to make excuses for a goalie that's making $8 million a year that can't stop a shot like that. Okay. You need to be able to call him out and say it's a soft goal. He needs to stop that. And it's a really bad play. If we're going to single out all the guys that make defensive mistakes and all these issues that are happening in the D zone, when it actually is the goalie's fault, we got to say it's the goalie's fault, and it's okay to do that.
And you've called out the goalie guild.
Yes. Well, I know. Hey, look, my uncle was a goalie and is now a goalie coach and has been a goalie coach a long time. All my cousins are goalies. Like, I know they all stick together.
What does he think of the reverse V?
Yeah, exactly. I think it leads to a lot of those like short side shots off the goalie's head and in. And, everybody's aiming upstairs for the goalie mask and trying to bank it in off the goalie mask now.
It's a new shot.
Yep. And they're going far side now, inside the far post. I think we start to see that a lot more because of the way the goalie's set up and what they're doing with that technique. It's interesting how the shooters, if we want to talk about that, how the shooters have adjusted to the newfangled goalie techniques that are
competitive responses across the board. Love to see them in the game. I love it when the league stays out of it and lets the players figure these things out. I wish they had done it in 2004 after a spectacular final between Tampa Bay and Calgary, in which speed and aggression was restored to the playoffs. And it would have been great to see where the hockey game would have gone had the league not stepped in and said, no, here's how we're going to do this. And we never get to find out.
Yep. A couple things that, now that we've put the Swayman stuff out there and like to wrap this all up, like, I think at the end of a pre-Christmas body of work where he's got like a 3.13 goals against average, an 887 save percentage, and a game like this now, like he needs to like really step it up in the next segment of the season. From after Christmas on, he needs to be able to win these games like last night against Edmonton. He needs to be a reason they won a game instead of a reason why they lost, or one of the reasons
or a reason we don't blame him for the loss.
Yes. And it needs to change. He's the honeymoon period after the contract of allowing him some time to say, okay, he's working himself into regular season shape after holding out to get his money is over. Like, he's going to start really, really hearing it from Bruins fans. Like I talked a lot about this in the podcast over the summer, that, as much as he was talking about what I'm worth and like, I know the business end of it and all this other, and he needs to feed his family and all the stuff that he was saying. Like I said multiple times, and we talked about it multiple times. If you want the money, that's great. But guess what? Expectations change. The fans change towards you. Everything changes once you start getting paid that kind of money, especially in a salary cap era where you demanding that kind of money is taking money they could use to put other players, scorers, whatever, in to better the roster. If you're making $3 million more than you probably should be making at this point in your career based on what you've done and where you are, you're costing the Bruins a very, good depth player, somebody that could really help them win games by you taking that money. If you do that, guess what? The expectations change, everything changes, and people will start getting on you if you're not playing up to the money that you demanded and that you ended up getting from the Bruins. And that's basically where we're at with him.
Who's the most underplayed player in the NHL over the last 10 years? And he plays for the Bruins.
Most underpaid?
Underpaid player in the NHL over the last 10 years, and he plays for Boston.
Right now?
Well, I'm not saying today. I'm talking last 10 years. Over the last 10 years, the most underpaid player in the NHL, and he plays for Boston.
You're asking who it is?
Yeah. Brad Marchand.
Well, definitely.
I mean, I when you talk about this, I say to myself, well, it's a brave new world for the Boston Bruins and cap management. Yeah. Because the Patrice Bergeron, Zdeno Chara, Tuukka Rask, David Krejci, Brad Marchand era is over. And it's just a whole different ball game now. And, and these are the ramifications thereof.
But yeah, it is. You're right. You're 100% right, Mick. But it's also unfortunate. Like, you could see this coming from a mile away. Like, everything that's happened to this point with that player and what's happened since he held out, you saw this coming from a mile away. Like, you knew this was coming. All of this was coming. And it was like a slow moving train that you couldn't get out of the way of, that ended up like still like crashing.
And they're going to try to win every game 0-0.
Yeah, that's right. All right, let's take a pause in our podcast to thank our friends at Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America and the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Instead of battling thousands of other players that could be pros or sharks, you simply pick more or less than on 2 to 6 player stat projections, and you watch the winnings roll right in. It is fun. It is super simple. Prize Picks is the best way to win real money this hockey season. Which players are going off, which ones aren't. Make your picks in less than 60 seconds and turn your sports opinion into real cold hard cash all season long on Prize Picks. Join now because this holiday season, Prize Picks is giving away 2 free picks in December, and they're giving away $30+ million in rewards during Picksmas. That's right, the 12 days of Picksmas. Who doesn't love that? This week on Prize Picks, I'm looking at the hockey board and selecting Ryan Reeves for over 3 hits, Adam Fox for more than 24 minutes time on ice, and Clayton Keller for more than 2.5 shots on net. Make your holidays bigger and brighter with Prize Picks, the best place to get real money action while watching your favorite sports. You can now win up to 1,000 times your money on Prize Picks. Prize Picks also now offers MasterCard for quick and easy deposits into your account this sports season. Download the Prize Picks app today and use the code CLNS, and you get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code CLNS on Prize Picks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It is guaranteed. Prize Picks, run your game. All right, Mick, let's get back into the podcast. There were some positives, right, from last night's game. First of all, the overall positive, taking 5 out of 10 on a road trip where you were absolute dog mess in the first 2 games. I think something needs to be said for that. They really salvaged the road trip. I like the way that they responded. So there continues to be some really good things about this team's resolve, their character, their willingness to pick themselves up off the mat. I think we're starting to see that being built into the cake with this team. That's a very good thing. Elias Lindholm, goals in the last 2 games. I think he was excellent in both Calgary and in Edmonton last night. I think he was very good in both games, scored in both games. Mark Kostelic, I think, continues to be a really good player for this team. I loved his goal last night where he just took it hard to the net and shoveled a backhander in. He's getting to be close to a pace of getting double digits in goals this season, which is great for a fourth line kind of guy, but he brings the energy every single night. Like when I looked at the box score after the game last night and he only had like 8 or 9 minutes of ice time, I was like, he should have gotten more the way he was playing. I feel like he's a guy that you got to get at least 10 minutes of ice to every single night just based on the way that he plays. So he's been a real find as a piece that came. A lot of people, I think, poo-pooed in the Linus Ullmark trade like he was just some fourth line, widget that wasn't going to be a real difference maker or was just a dime a dozen kind of guy. I think he's exactly what this team needed for a physical energy player that was going to throw hits, that was going to bring a jolt of something to the team that drags them into the fight, like has a little bit of offense. I really like him as a player. And I thought Oliver Wahlstrom looked pretty good last night. Again, only had 8 minutes of ice time, had a couple shots on net, had a good scoring chance off a pass from Charlie Coyle, but I liked the plays he was making along the walls. I thought he was good playing with his teammates. I thought he was pretty good defensively. Overall, I thought it was a real good first game for him. So I think there were plenty of positives on this trip and in these last couple of games to look at and like.
A lot of adrenaline there for Wahlstrom.
I'm sure.
I am dead sure this season's going down to the last game of the season. The Bruins are going to need to win a shootout in order to make the playoffs, and Oliver Wahlstrom is going to make that move.
Oh, yeah? You calling that now?
I'm calling him right now. So he's going to do the spin backhand to put the Bruins in the playoffs.
As long as Jeremy Swayman doesn't go to Buffs before the game and have to ask out of the game because he's having intestinal distress, I think they should be okay.
Uh-oh. Hashtag. I was thinking the same thing about Kostelic. I know that it was through the arrangement of the line reshuffling that Kostelic was centering the fourth line again, or at least playing on the fourth line. He didn't take that many faceoffs, but 848 for him is not enough. I feel like I got a fever.
Yeah.
And it's not for more cowbell. It's more Kastelik.
Yes.
And it's
no, they needed to find a way for him to play more.
They got to get him in more. They got to get him in the game more.
Yep.
I do love the energy that comes with those brief opportunities. And same for Mark McLaughlin, who has really held up his end of things in his role. I think he's been terrific in his role.
Yep.
He plays so hard. Wahlstrom is an interesting study. We'll see if being a Bruin can bring out of him something that the Islanders could never tap into. I do wonder in a fast game like that if he can keep up. But the kid's obviously got some talent, and so what the hell? Right now it's a better option than Tyler Johnson had been. Yep. I don't understand the circumstances of Tyler Johnson's prior absence or the Bruins' decision to move on at this point. It almost sounds mutual.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I was wondering the same thing when I saw that, because usually like completely waiving a guy is not the Bruins' MO. Or maybe they had some kind of deal where he just wasn't going to go to the minor leagues and, wasn't interested in that and wanted to pursue things elsewhere. And that was kind of in a tacit agreement that they had. It could be any of that stuff. I do think, yes, when it comes down to it, there's two things I think at play here. One of them is Oliver Wahlstrom being definitely a better option for them as far as a guy they want to keep around as a forward in the mix that could, he's younger. He's definitely got more potential as far as he could grow into something.
He also threw a hell of a hit last night.
He did. Like he played great. He was excellent along the walls. I thought he was fantastic along the walls and throwing that hit that you mentioned. Just be invested in all three zones. But I think he's a guy also, like, look, let's face it, when you get waived by a team and you're a former first-round pick, I think that's a wake-up call that, you're heading towards the last stop saloon pretty soon for your NHL career if you don't turn things around and really put everything into every shift and everything that you're doing. And maybe we'll see something a little different out of him with that kind of a reality going on. So that's going to be interesting to see. But the other part of this with the waiving of Tyler Johnson, I think, Mick, is Matt Patra having scored goals in 7 straight games in the AHL in Providence and really becoming exactly what you want to see when, for developmental reasons, you send a young player down to the AHL to get playing time, to get confidence, to play in all situations, to play a bigger role, to take more ownership of the team, to really get your mojo back. And this worked, I think, for Lowry last year, too, where they did that a couple of times, and it turned into him being like a really good player in the second half of last year for the Bruins at the NHL level. I think we're seeing that with Patra now in Providence, where he is really becoming the player they want him to be, and he's really got his offensive mojo back, and he's got all of his swagger and his confidence back. And that, I think, is going to pay dividends for them in the second half, where I think they're going to have to find a spot for him to play as well. And that's probably part of the thinking with Tyler Johnson is eventually Patra's coming back, and there's really going to be no place at the end for Johnson at that point, definitely, when you've got Oliver Wahlstrom and you've got a guy like Patra that's pushing to come back as well. So I think all of that factors into the Tyler Johnson move as we start to see like what's going to happen. Like, wouldn't it be interesting, Mick, as an option to look at if Patra comes back, you have him as a third line center and you move Charlie Coyle to wing and you have him play with, maybe like Marchand and Lindholm as a winger, Charlie Coyle as a wing with those two. And that really solidifies that line. And you can allow Patra to play with a couple of guys in the third line where he could be a little bit more of an offense driver. I think that's something that you would definitely want to look at in the second half of the year before you go out and maybe go invest in a trade deadline winger that can score you some goals. See what you have internally with all these different options. And I think Patra and the way he's playing in Providence is turning into an internal option they're going to definitely have to look at some point soon.
I don't know. I just have the whole thing gives me a very Coyle Kreider vibe. I think that at the end of the day, the Bruins are going to go get themselves a winger who can pop a few in the net. And Coyle was a very key acquisition for Don Sweeney in 19, bringing in the ability to play center and be a horse, solidify the bottom six, deploy to wing as needed. And he just hasn't really been a successful winger in those roles. He's really settled into the center position. Right. So I'm looking at the return.
But has he really? You know what though? Has he really played that much? I think he's predominantly played center. Like he's in.
No, absolutely.
Played wing, and I don't really feel like he's been gotten an extended look at wing in a really good situation like that.
They haven't liked it. They never. When the situations that would have called for it, they didn't like it. So moving when Jim Montgomery, and this is my opinion, Jim Montgomery determined at a certain point, he agreed with me that Pavel Zacha was their best forward.
Yep.
He was playing the most tenacious game, the most second, third effort game. Yep. And with the talent that he has, he was rising above. He was the best player before Marchand really got himself together, before Pastas really started hitting stride. He was the guy. And he needed to have him in the middle of the rink to affect more of the game. That leveraged Matt Poitras off the lineup because there was no place for him. And they weren't going to play him at wing. It was a much better option for him to play in Providence and go do exactly what you just described. Now that Poitras is trying to play his way out of the AHL back into the NHL, and because the Bruins need offense, they've got a situation. And I don't think Coyle to wing is going to be a solution. It wasn't before. I'd love it if it were the case because Charlie Coyle has been such a good impact performer for the Bruins. Playoff style player, puck protector, physical in the battle, and also with his elite stride. I just don't feel like this has been he's one of those guys who inexplicably came out of the gate really kind of off. Yeah. And I do feel like he's been a lot better. And I feel like he's starting to beat Charlie Coyle, do Charlie Coyle stuff. So I would hate like hell to see him go, but my suspicion increases here with Poitras' surge that they got to be thinking about this.
So you're talking about a Charlie Coyle for Chris Kreider trade, basically.
Something that would be built that way. I look at the salaries, I look at the career stage, I look at their ages, and I look at what the Bruins' needs are. And I know as much as that would just be such a non-Don Sweeney type of move to get a pure winger, to give up a center for a pure winger, that this has got to be something that they're talking about.
Yeah, that's interesting. I'd be surprised if that happens, but I think you're right in that, especially if they feel like Poitras is pretty close to ready. I think that would necessitate, unless you decided to move Zacha back to the wing, that would necessitate Coyle going to the wing. And like, look, even in the short term, I think you should give that a look before you're going to make a move at the deadline, to my point.
Everything will be internal first,
Get a long extended look and see what it looks like first before you make that decision and see, you'd give him a chance to see, because he's obviously got great chemistry with Marchand already, Coyle. And if you put him with Lindholm, and that's really a stacked line that's got three bona fide, very good NHL players on it, you may start to see great play in all three zones and them being able to complement each other in ways that it feels like a lot of times now with the top two lines, like there's two top six guys and there's a guy that's not really a great fit in the top six on both of those lines, and I think if you can find a way to get as many bona fide top six guys or guys that can play at that level playing together, I think it's only going to help you with the play that those lines are going to have. Because I just think, Brazeau will make a play sometimes, and he does. It gives you good effort, and I think he's definitely an NHL player. There's no question about it. I just don't think he's a top six guy on a good team. I think he's more of a third line guy. And same thing with Morgan Geekie. I think he's more of a third line guy, even though he's playing better now. He's definitely being much more of a factor and much more like he normally is. But I just think you're asking them more out of them than they're capable of by playing up, where I think Coyle is a little more of a fit in those positions, given what he's done in the past and given what he is as a player. And you're asking less of him to be something he's not than you are with Geekie and Brazeau by putting him in those spots. But to your point, he hasn't played a ton of wing over the last, 5 years now. So you're asking him to play a different position than he's played in a long time. And that's certainly a part of the whole thing as well. Before we get into this more, Mick, though, let me talk about game time. We'll take a break in the podcast and ask you what you're doing in this holiday season, folks. You're still buying presents? Are you still looking for stocking stuffers? Are you still looking for gifts that will be memories, core memories for people? And that's why I think tickets to concerts, tickets to sporting events, all that stuff makes a great gift because it's an experience. It's not just something you open up out of a box and play with for a few minutes and then put it away. This is something you can take family members to, you can take friends to, you go to games, you go to comedy, you go to concerts. Game Time can help you with tickets to that. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time for obviously your Bruins tickets, but also if you're looking for tickets to the Patriots, Celtics, or even comedy or concert tickets as well in this season of giving, Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets to see your favorite team play live even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. The game of the week for this week that would make an outstanding Christmas stocking stuffer is the December 28th showdown between the Bruins and the Sabres at the Garden right after Christmas. What would be a better gift than Bruins tickets to a game right after Christmas at Christmas time? The super deal is $229 for seventh row loge seats. That's a great value for Bruins tickets. Game Time has a lot of great features. Priority Game Time picks. Curation makes it easier to save more on sports, concerts, comedy, theater, etc. The all-in pricing is a great feature. You toggle this and it shows you the total up front with no surprise fees at the checkout. We all hate the surprise fees at the checkout when it comes to buying tickets. It also gives you the lowest price guarantee, or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. 110%. What's better than that? Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply, but download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. What time is it, Mick?
Game time.
Game time.
And that stub, that's the first row of the stadium seats behind the big concourse aisle in Boston Garden.
What year, Mick?
69-70.
Wow.
Pittsburgh Penguins. Joe Daly in net. No mask.
Oh, man. You could go game for game with my dad talking about the 1969-1970 Bruins. That's when back my parents were less than a year old. That was obviously way before I was born, and they had an apartment in Melrose, and their date night was like watching a Bruins game on TV together in the apartment after they had dinner. That was like what they did every night in the wintertime. So I'm sure they were watching that game as well. So
frozen in time.
That's awesome. I love it. All right. So, yeah, just your thoughts on where the Bruins are at this point. Any thoughts, any other lingering thoughts you have from this road trip as a whole now that you look at it? I think, like I said before, I feel like this is the Bruins encapsulated this whole season. Like there was some good, there was some bad, a little bit of a disappointing ending, and you felt like they could never super get on the roll that you'd like to see them get on to make you feel like they're going to make a lot of noise in the playoffs. I just feel like at the end of the day, and we're starting to see this bear out in the standings, they got passed by Tampa Bay, so they're no longer in the Atlantic Division playoff structure. They're in a wild card spot now. And I feel like, to your point, when you were talking about a shootout at the end of the season to determine the playoff spot, it feels like they're going to be battling for their playoff lives with like Ottawa, who, by the way, Linus Ullmark has been amazing for them, and they are pushing into a playoff spot, and they look like a team that's emerging from the Atlantic Division depths. Pittsburgh Penguins are finally come back from the dead, and they're playing good hockey as well. It looks like there's going to be some teams that the Bruins are fighting tooth and nail with to try to get into the playoffs here, based on the games in hand that the other teams have on them, based where they are in the standings, and based on the way that they're playing. So it feels like to me a wild card team, and they're going to have to fight for it. And there's not going to be a lot of noise in the playoffs with this team, just given some of the flaws and some of the mistakes and some of the things that keep popping up with this group.
Someone on X this morning who goes by the name Jacob Voracek tweeted that the Crosby, Malkin, and Letang should be that much more a slam dunk first ballot Hall of Fame trio for if the Penguins make the playoffs.
Yeah.
I mean, when you look at what they've accomplished here, they and the Senators are both 7-2-1 in the last 10, and the Sens have 2 games in hand on the Bruins, and all they have to do is keep doing what they're doing, and they're going to pass them. So this is a very 09-10 type of season for the Bruins. It was a post-Kessel year. and it was the year they were trying to win 0-0.
Yep.
And it was everything was hard sledding. They didn't have a Winter Classic to break it up. And they wound up winning a playoff series, and that was the infamous one with Philadelphia where David Krejci went down, swinging the momentum and causing them to go into the lose every game by a little instead of win by a little. And
didn't they beat Buffalo that year?
Yeah, 6 games, right, without home ice.
I remember that.
I
still talk about that series because my son loves I'm Still Standing by Elton John and like plays it all the time. And that was what they played in Buffalo every time they lost a game at home after the game was over in Buffalo, is that would be playing through the concourse as the fans were getting up and leaving, unhappy that the Sabres had just coughed up a playoff game, but the series wasn't over.
Poor Buffalo.
Yes.
Yeah. It's a rough road there. But so this division is finally doing what everybody said it was going to do for a few years, where the Senators have emerged as the best of Detroit, Montreal, and Ottawa.
Yep.
And Detroit ain't far behind them. So as far as team building goes, they're right there. So the Sens are now becoming formidable. They made the big move for the goalie, and look who's winning more percentage of their points than the Boston Bruins right now this morning, 563 to 559. So this is going to be one of those years. And I do think that, with echoing your respect for Brazeau's effort, when you watch him trying so hard, doing everything he's supposed to do, he's so coachable, he battles so hard. He's not blessed with great speed, but he's worked himself into such great shape that he can keep up with the game and get chances here and there. Yep. But, he's just like, he's almost Charlie Simmer, but he's not Charlie Simmer, so all hell is not breaking loose around the net for him. So every once in a while, there's a tease. And if this is it, then the Bruins are definitely going to be looking to upgrade at that position.
Yeah, the one thing watching Brazeau play that I wish he was a little more of was just an a-hole. I wish he had a little more FU in his game, given the size and strength that he has, I think he would clear out even more space for himself if he had a little bit more of that.
90-point player, he'd win the Lady Byng.
What's that?
If he was a 90-point player, he'd win the Lady Byng.
Yes, that's what I mean.
And I think the Bruins have too many Lady Byng candidates.
Yeah, if he was a dirty, mean, and nasty, a little bit more of that, I really would like him a lot more. And I think he would be more effective, to be honest with you. I think he would clear out more space for himself, where guys would steer clear of him a little bit more. And I think playing like that, really finishing checks, really making people feel it when he's in a battle with them, I think he would be a little more effective offensively too. He would have more room to operate, and maybe the speed wouldn't always be such an issue. That's just a little thing.
Well,
but
if he had Kastelik's personality, it'd be Cam Neely.
Yes.
So I mean, without the speed, Cam was a better skater straight down the ice. He got a hell of a stride.
Yep. But there's times where he doesn't finish checks when he could, and I think his size, he needs to do that a little bit more. And I think if he has a little bit more of that in his game, I think it would help him in his overall game.
Maybe there's a little tweakery can put him over a line. I remember Glenn Murray, how he was a horrible skater when he first came up to the NHL in '92, right before those playoffs, and as his first tenure with the Bruins, he could never quite get on the forecheck. He could never quite get there.
Yep.
While he was gone to Los Angeles, Pittsburgh, wherever it was, he definitely learned how to skate, because it was something that happened. The Bruins reacquired him in the 01-02 season, and then Jason Allison went the other way, and Murray came back to be a Bruin throughout that decade, and his stride had gotten to that point where it's almost Neely-esque, where he would just push, and you'd feel like the rink was going to break. And he got over that fine line where all of a sudden he could disrupt the retrievals. He could cause havoc. He could score goals because he's a great shooter. And he really was an effective player for the Bruins for a long time. And his second time around here. Brazeau, I don't know if that gear is in there. He looks to me like he's done done just about everything possible they can think he can wring out of himself.
Yeah.
Maybe, going to a hypnotist and finding out he's being told he's Mark Kastelik, that might do it. I don't know. But yeah, I just don't think the reality is setting in for me that this is kind of it.
Yeah.
And if this is it, then this is where the Bruins got to be looking.
Yeah.
And, Tyler Toffoli makes probably too much money. He's not that old. He just seems like he's been around forever. So you feel like, man, can that guy still even get up and down the ice? He can still play. He can still score.
Yeah.
You say, well, who is it? What are they going to do here? And you're talking internal stuff. I'm sure they'll look at that before they look at anything else.
Yeah. I mean, they got to look at that first, but I think ultimately they're going to bring somebody in at the trade deadline. I don't think there's any doubt.
It would just ease the game a little bit for them if they could get the odd goal that they miss right now.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to say that I miss
like last
Jake
night,
DeBrusk. I don't miss Jake DeBrusk.
Like last night, for instance, scoring another goal to make it 3-0 instead of 2-0. Like,
yeah.
That would have made a huge difference in that game, I think. And that was another part of the, castigating Swayman for a soft goal is part of it. Another part of it is not being able to extend the lead to 3-0 when they had a bunch of chances to.
Pasta passed up a shot. Oh,
he did.
It's just
he did.
It looked to me he was trying to get Wallstrom his first goal there or something. I'm not sure. But if they could just ease some of these games, just ease it a little bit by getting another stick there. And you say, well, what did you do with DeBrusk? If you were going to keep Jake DeBrusk, you're going to have to pay core player money. Yep. You can't pay core player money to a guy who comes and goes the way Jake DeBrusk comes and goes.
Especially not when you're paying $8 million to a goalie to let up soft goals in a 2-0 game. Hey-o. And Mick, thank you very much for joining us. Let's also thank our sponsors again real quick. Download the Prize Picks app today and use the code CLNS and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code CLNS on Prize Picks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks, run your game. Let's also thank Game Time. Great option right now for holiday gifts, stocking stuffers is tickets at Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. But again, download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. What time is it, Mick?
Game time.
Game time. Mick, happy holidays, my friend. Merry Christmas.
You too, Joe.
All right, everybody else out there, happy holidays to you. I think we're going to have one more show maybe on Christmas Eve next week. We'll see. But enjoy the holiday weekend right now before Christmas. Thank you for listening. We'll see you at the rink.